Our eldest daughter doesn't look like me or you at all. Get a DNA test. One day, my husband suddenly blurted out such words. What on earth has gotten into him? She is undoubtedly, genuinely, the child I gave birth to. Around that time, a shocking truth suddenly came our way. My name is Alice Smith. I have 2 daughters with my husband Scott. Rosa, who is in 2nd grade, and Lily, who is in the senior class of preschool. Rosa is reserved and Lily is bubbly. Their personalities are nothing alike, but they hardly fight and get along very well. However, I've noticed something off about them lately, especially Rosa, who has started showing signs of sadness more often. Upon asking her, it turned out that her distress was due to her father. Lately, he has been coming home late, mostly past midnight, hardly ever having dinner with the children. This seemed to trouble Rosa, who has been feeling lonely. I had my reservations about my husband's late nights too. As he arrived home late as usual, I pleaded with him, "Hey, could you possibly come home a bit earlier? I wish you'd spend more time with the kids." But he dismissed it, saying, "I'm busy with work, what can be done?" Furthermore, he started making threatening remarks towards me. "If you don't work, you guys won't be able to sustain yourselves. Are you okay with that?" At that time, I was still working full-time, and his salary hadn't increased despite his overtime hours. Pointing this out led to him lashing out. "Can't you even support your husband?" In the end, meaningful conversations with him became impossible, and since that day, he started coming home even later. I lied to Rosa, saying, "Daddy seems to be busy with work for a while." He said sorry though. "Well, if he's busy with work, it can't be helped," Rosa replied with a smile, but her face seemed lonely still. After much contemplation, I quit my full-time job and started part-time work. Though the income reduced, I wanted to spend more time with my children. During extremely busy periods, I relied on both sets of grandparents to look after the kids. As a result, Rosa seemed happier than before. Lily, too, was enjoying her daily life. Yet, on the rare days that their father came home early, their joy was visibly greater. I realized then they indeed needed their father's presence. I wished he would show more concern towards our children. However, recalling our last failed conversation, I hesitated to voice my grievances to him. One day, after her bath, Rosa looked at the clock and remarked, "Daddy didn't come home today either, huh?" The clock was nearly 9 p.m. Remembering the conversation Rosa and her father had the previous night, I felt uneasy. Yesterday, when my husband came home unusually early, Rosa asked him, "Daddy, can you come home early tomorrow too?" After pondering a little, he nodded, saying, "Yeah, I think I can come back at the same time as today." Rosa believed in his words and was looking forward to it. Yet, in the end, he didn't return. Seeing the sad look on Rosa's face, I pulled her into a hug and suggested, "How about you sleep with Mommy tonight, just for a special treat?" "Really?" Not just Rosa, but Lily also reacted to my words. Perhaps because they usually sleep in their room, both seemed very happy. "Yes. Also, I just got a message Grandma and Grandpa from Daddy's side are coming to visit tomorrow." Upon hearing about the grandparents' visit, both Rosa and Lily lit up and smiled. We went to the bedroom and the 3 of us lay down in a river formation with me in the middle. Lily fell asleep in no time. Rosa was chatting for a while about school stories and how she was looking forward to tomorrow, but after a bit she started snoring. I made sure both were asleep and slowly got up so as not to wake them up. I waited in the living room, but my husband didn't come back after all. The next day, as communicated, the in-laws came over in the morning. I don't have a very good relationship with my husband, who I've been married to for 10 years, but I have a good relationship with the in-laws. In fact, our relationship has progressed to a point where I can comfortably discuss issues about my husband with them. I have been consulting with my mother-in-law about my husband's recent behaviors for several weeks. My mother-in-law does not shield her son, but rather she was quite indignant about his attitude. That being said, since she has only heard my side of the story, She wanted to see for herself if he was really behaving that way. That's why she came over first thing in the morning. In the absence of the girls, I promptly conveyed this to my mother-in-law. Last night, he didn't come home again, without even contacting. My mother-in-law, raising her eyes, fumed. That boy, I swear, I'll give him a piece of my mind. Unbeknownst to us, my husband came home. He was reeking of alcohol and was moving his shoes while yelling something. Welcome back. I greeted him and he turned around quickly, glaring at me with fury. There you are, you betrayer! Huh? A betrayer? Why do I have to be treated with such an attitude? I sighed and asked my husband, Are you still drunk? My husband, with a sour expression on his face, wobbled as he stood up. Don't try to trick me. I know, right? Rosa isn't my child. Rosa isn't his child? What on earth is he talking about? I was taken aback by my husband's incomprehensible statement. But more than that, I was concerned about his loud voice. Even if it was just drunken rambling, it's something I absolutely don't want Rosa to hear. I decided to calm my husband down at any cost. Please lower your voice a bit. What will you do if Rosa hears this? Do you even realize what you are saying? However, my husband kept on yelling exaggeratedly, showing no signs of changing his attitude. Shut up, shut up! Don't order me around. So you don't want Rosa to find out, huh? It's just as I thought then. I was momentarily at a loss for words, but to control my anger, I exhaled and once again told my husband. There's no way that's true, right? Rosa is without a doubt undeniably our child. I just don't want to hurt Rosa with your stupid remarks, that's all. As I glared at him, he averted his eyes for a moment, but then fiercely glared back at me. Then let's do a DNA test. You can't do it, can you? Fine. At my immediate response, he seemed surprised for a moment, but then asked back, Oh really, are you sure? It's a DNA test, huh? This will prove your betrayal, won't it? I replied, It's not a problem, and stared back at him. If the DNA test would bring out proof, then there's nothing better than that. Gradually, he began to avoid eye contact and mumbled to himself. At that moment, my mother-in-law appeared from the living room. What on earth are you making a fuss about? I can hear you all the way in the living room. My husband, seeing his mother, widened his eyes. Perhaps thinking his mother would side with him, he pointed at me and said, Mom, listen to me. Alice has betrayed me. Rosa isn't my child. My mother-in-law shifted her gaze from my husband to me. I looked straight back into my mother-in-law's eyes. That's not true. Rosa is definitely our child, mine and Scott's. I explained this to him, but for some reason Scott doesn't believe me. We got to the point of discussing about a DNA test, since we weren't getting anywhere. Just then, I felt someone's presence behind me. When I turned my gaze, Rosa was standing at the entrance of the living room, staring at us. Rosa looked at me and tensed up a bit, then asked timidly, Am I not Mommy and Daddy's child? I squatted down to be at eye level with Rosa and firmly denied it while looking into her eyes. Rosa, you are definitely our child. Mine and Daddy's. Daddy is just saying weird things because he is drunk. I'm sorry you had to hear that. Rosa still seemed confused but slowly nodded at my words. As my mother-in-law and I sighed in relief, this time my husband started yelling. Then why doesn't Rosa look like me? Lily looks like me, but Rosa doesn't resemble either of us. Why is that? Indeed, Rosa doesn't resemble either me or my husband, but jumping to the conclusion that she's not blood-related is too far-fetched. As I was wondering how to explain this to my husband, my mother-in-law chimed in from behind us. Rosa resembles my mother, in other words, your grandmother. At my mother-in-law's statement, my husband froze, making a face that said, Eh? She gave him a cold stare, saying, My mom passed away before Scott was born, so you didn't know. Even so, to doubt your own child and wife just because they don't resemble you. My husband stammered, But, I mean... I didn't hold back as I threw questions at my perplexed husband. More importantly, I'm curious as to why you suddenly started saying such things. Can you also explain why you've been attending an unusual number of drinking parties lately and coming home late? My mother-in-law also glared at him, demanding, Answer clearly. At those words, he averted his eyes and shut his mouth. He was shaking violently, his body stiffened. The ring of his smartphone came right after that. but he made no move to answer the call. Ignoring his resistance, I swiftly grabbed the smartphone from him. Martin? I read aloud the name displayed on the smartphone screen, a surname I hadn't heard before. At that, my husband hurriedly began to explain. It's a subordinate who recently joined. I'll call back later. Give it back. At that moment, Lily came out from the living room and dropped a bombshell. Daddy, were you staying at Tom's place again? Everyone was stunned. Tom? I know about it. Daddy has been staying at Tom's place many times. I heard it from Tom. He said his dad is on a business trip here. Speaking of Tom, he is a kid who attends the same kindergarten as Lily. I believe his father works for a major company and is currently on a solo assignment. I glared sharply at my husband, but he just opened and closed his mouth, saying nothing. Having no other choice, I pressed the receive button on the still ringing smartphone. Ah, hello, is this Scott? A woman's voice came through the phone. She continued, Did the discussion about the divorce with your wife go well? I was worried, so I called, but... In a panic, my husband reached for the smartphone, but his father, who had come out of the living room, restrained him from behind. I listened silently to the person on the other end of the line. Scott, are you there? Did it not go well? Were you refused a DNA test by your wife? If that's the case, it's even more suspicious. If you press on this, you'll surely be able to divorce her at her fault. At her fault? What on earth is this woman saying? As my disgust grew, I replied, I'm listening, Tom's mom. At that, a sound of shock came through before the call was disconnected. Facing cold stares from everyone, my husband finally confessed. It seems he met Tom's mom, or rather his affair partner, during the kindergarten drop-off and pickup. At that time, she said she had something to consult with him and exchange contacts. She apparently told my husband is away on a solo assignment and there's no one around. I'm struggling with childcare and have no one to rely on. Upon hearing her story, my husband sympathetically offered, I can help if you want. As he continued to lend an ear to her problems, feelings blossomed, and before he knew it, he was frequently visiting her house. At first, he felt a considerable amount of guilt towards us, his family. However, one day, the affair partner made a ridiculous observation while looking at a family photo. Could it be that Rosa isn't related by blood? She doesn't look like either you or your wife. At first, he thought it was absurd, but gradually started thinking, what if, and fell into a state of paranoia. At the same time, his affection for me and the family seemed to fade. As his guilt disappeared, he became more immersed with his affair partner. Then came a proposal from Tom's mom. Let's both divorce and remarry. I thought that was the best choice for me. Tearfully, my husband said this. Honestly, I'm the one who wants to cry. Thinking about Rosa, my anger outweighs my sadness. I have a lot to say to you, but I do agree with the divorce. Upon hearing my words, my husband raised his tear-streaked face. Didn't you hear? I can't accept you anymore, neither as a husband nor as a father. Then, with wide-open eyes, he desperately approached our daughters with a frantic look on his face. Hey, you guys. You'd be happy if I stayed, right? I'm your father, okay? Both daughters shook their heads in response. We'll be fine without a dad, because you were never around before anyway. Lily and I just need mom. Besides, Tom said that you're going to be his dad now. My husband stood there lost for words and bewildered. In haste, I bowed deeply to my in-laws. I'm so sorry for this, but we just can't continue with this man. However, we don't want to take away the grandparents from the children. Could you please continue to see them occasionally? To this, the in-laws shook their heads, saying not at all. On the contrary, we are the ones who should apologize. We too agree with the divorce, and we would actually like to request to keep seeing our grandchildren, right, honey? Yeah, exactly. We were about to disown our son, not just for treating our daughter-in-law poorly, but almost taking away our grandchildren. Thank you for not severing ties with us. At the words of my in-laws, my husband was furious, standing alone. What are you saying, Dad, Mom? Are you saying it's my fault? It's her fault for causing suspicions in the first place, isn't it? Furiously pointing a finger at me, my husband's veins were prominent on his forehead. Hearing his words, even I reached my breaking point. My fault, you say? Who do you think you're speaking to? Alice? If you want to talk about origins, it's your fault for having an affair. Being instigated by that woman to say Rosa isn't my child. How could you say such a thing? Alice, calm down, okay? Shut up! Always coming home in the wee hours, barely paying attention to your daughter. You're unfit to be a father. We're divorcing right now. Later, with the help of the in-laws, my husband and I successfully finalized a divorce. I ensured that he would duly pay child support and alimony. Of course, I am also demanding compensation from the woman he had an affair with. It seemed that Tom's mom had planned to keep the affair hidden from her husband, who was working in another city, but eventually it came out and she was divorced. My ex-husband apparently planned to remarry her, but their relationship became gossip even in the kindergarten circle, and it seems they were ostracized by the other moms. Without telling him, she moved away with her child. Since then, my ex-husband has become a workaholic as if he possessed. He seems to be making a living by earnestly earning money to somehow make amends for the sake of the children. Recently, I have started to think that if the girls say we want to see our father, I might allow it. Later, my mother-in-law showed me a photo of the grandmother, and I couldn't help but laugh at how much Rosa resembled her. If my husband had seen this photo earlier, perhaps there might have been a different future. However, there's no end to such what-ifs. I decided not to think about it anymore. Meanwhile, I began working full-time to raise my children on my own. I am worried that by reducing the time spent with my daughters, I may make them feel lonely again. But thanks to the support from my parents and in-laws, it seems to be alright for now. I intend to keep this up and protect the smiles of my two girls. Thank you for watching the video all the way to the end. If you resonated with the content, please leave a positive rating and a comment.